Hi there. I'm going to do a review for The Matrix Revolutions. This movie came out in 2003, and just like the other Matrix movies, it stars the same plethora of characters and people. Got Keanu Reeves as Neo, you got Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus, you got Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity. This movie is a finalization of the Matrix trilogy. I'm not sure this was initially in the planning stages. I think the first movie was really just a one off. And because it ended up being a bit more successful than they probably thought, they made these other two movies. Nonetheless, their storylines seem to work out in the end. They seem to be able to add them up. The basic premise of The Matrix, of course, here is finalized. The fact that more or less, Zion is under threat. Keanu Reeves has to figure out how to deal with the Matrix. And again, because he's superpowered now he can do whatever and more or less whatever he wants. He's not under the limits. However, I believe it's in this film where he gets stuck in an in-between world. Something was designed by a different program, so he doesn't have as much power there. It doesn't really matter. Inevitably, he figures out a way to get past the problem. Yeah, it's not too bad. I think the problem is these movies spend a little too much time on trying to be extra dimensional, silly thought movies instead of just getting their storylines out. They want to pretend too much to be about how how um how they can create curiosity, but they don't really answer their own question because too much of these movies is dedicated to just the fact that in the Matrix now, Neo can do a lot of things. I guess the most interesting plot point of this movie is actually the fact that the machines are drilling their way down to Zion, and Zion is actually planning for a huge epic final battle. And indeed, it is being planned out that they have a whole bunch of machines, equipment that's designed to be like human machine. Humans control these contraptions that more or less add to them. To me, they look more or less like oversized gorillas. I don't know. It's a funky shot. Nonetheless, these things have got machine automatic. What is it? More or less machine guns on them, and they have a whole pile of them. Basically, get they had to get all their equipment out for last stance defense. I'm not sure they actually expected the machines to do this. I think they sort of didn't really know the machines were going to do this until it became obvious the machines were indeed going to do this. I don't know. I think the problem with the storyline, though, is that they ran out of storyline. They ran out of interesting things to talk about. And so this movie doesn't really have the same level of interest as, say, the first movie. The first movie, when Neo is discovering his powers, there's still a sensation of threat. Now Neo has to be stuck in a literal God zone in order to be beatable. And indeed, it sort of does happen that way. He gets stuck in an in-between world, has to figure out what to do in there. I forget exactly. I haven't seen the movie in a while. It's more or less the fact that he gets stuck in like a subway station, and more or less it's built by a different program. No powers there, but nonetheless he does eventually figure out how to get out. It's actually a curious thing. I think that's where and he kind of meets a curious family down there for one bit because, as they said, well, it's funny how the wife says you don't belong here, and I find that funny how she says that. And meanwhile, the husband's like, be polite, you know, he could be down here for a very long time. The daughter's wondering who Neo is and why he's down here. And the basic point is that Neo got kind of stuck down there for what he did. More or less, they need a backup. I don't think there's anything particularly. I don't think there's actually too much amazing with the Matrix Revolutions, other than the fact that Neo ends up having to fight a final match against Agent Smith, because Agent Smith in the Matrix Reloaded sort of started to figure out how to do things. He's a program that didn't fit into the pile of junk. Instead, he came out and he found new life, or it found new life, and became a transcendent program. Now, how this happened, they don't really get an explanation. It just happened, so it's the Matrix. I mean, we're talking about a world of virtual reality where everything's a program except for the humans. But nonetheless, there was a few interesting things in this movie, I think. I think actually, ironically, the most interesting part is when they are trying to stop the drilling machines from coming down, and it seems like they're doing well enough for quite a while, because only a few squids can get down into the layer of Zion and actually affect the place, until it's revealed that once the machines come down with an it seems like they were doing quite well for quite long enough, and they were able to keep the fight going. And then at some point, I guess the squid mass reached critical mass, and they came down in a huge plethora, and they basically revealed that there's no chance for these people. And that's what became obvious, is that this is what is the problem. Nonetheless, they do well in the fight. There's one kid who didn't qualify for the machines. He's, I guess, not big enough or something. Not entirely sure what the actual reason. He instead ends up being one of the guys who brings the bullets out for the machine guns, which is almost as mission critical as running the machines themselves. Nonetheless, it ends up being a fairly decent movie. I wouldn't write home too much about it. And also, Neo eventually figures out how to do ends up in a boss fight with Agent Smith, which ends up going, places. It's not too bad. I mean, it could have been. There was actually a better movie of this done earlier in time called Dark City, but that was long in the past already by the time these movies came out. And now we've got a whole bunch of new movies that are all out of the system. Nonetheless, The Matrix ends up being fairly decent, ends up working fairly decently. I don't know. It's Neo ends up coming to common pass with Agent Smith. More or less, one of them has to go. It's a equation trying to fix itself. So Agent Smith, the Oracle basically tells him that the equation is trying to balance itself out. So more or less, Neo has to deal with Smith, because Smith is Neo's alter ego in the form of pure chaos. So they have to fight, and then they end up fighting, and then Smith basically absorbs Neo, and doesn't realize that's actually the key part. Is that it's one. And nonetheless, this movie ends off with a fairly decent premise, I guess you could say. It's not perfect. It's more or less the machine world finds out they do actually need the humans to win this fight. Actually, they need Neo to win the fight against Agent Smith, so the machines hook them all up. Oh yeah, there's also an interesting subplot where Neo gets back flying with Trinity, and they end up having to come up to the surface, because Neo has to basically confront the machine world and deal with them, and that's what they end up having to do. And it actually produces one of the most brilliant sequences in the movie. In the entire genre of this show, it produces one of the most brilliant sequences. It's actually kind of a unique shot where they briefly, the ship, they make surface. They see, of course, the machine, the Neo and Trinity have to fly up to the surface, and of course they see the huge equipment for putting the humans into battery format. They see all that stuff. They see all the fields of harvesting. They see all that stuff. It's actually rather impressive. And then they see something that's the most impressive, is that I guess apparently Trinity is the first person in 200 years or so that has seen sunlight. Nobody has seen sunlight in 200 years because of what happened in the Matrix, revealing that basically the humans darkened the skies. Nonetheless, yeah, Trinity ends up being the first person in a long time to see sunlight. She's like, wow, I can't believe this. Only to end up dead in a few seconds after this because they end up falling down and falling directly into a machine pool. But that's where Neo has to confront the machines and deal with the machines and deal with Agent Smith. And because of his victory, a truce is signed, more or less. And the squids that almost wiped out Zion end up floating. Basically, they realize the war is over. They can't believe it. The war is actually over. They couldn't believe what happened. And they realized Neo had done it. He had found the truce. He had found the key. Not sure if this actually is what happened. Sometimes I'm thinking that this is the big joke, that the machines just need the humans placated for a little bit to make them think that they've won. But nonetheless, it's an interesting concept. It worked out. It ends up being decent. The ending is nice because it's the fact that some humans will be freed, more or less. I think the ultimate goal right now is they got to figure out how to lighten the skies up so the machines have access to the atmosphere again. Humans and machines have access to the atmosphere, and Earth can be recovered. But nonetheless, they don't get into that death. They don't worry about that. Who cares about that? Nonetheless, there it is, The Matrix Reloaded. Decent enough film, not too bad. Getting older with every passing year, but nonetheless works well enough for its time, did well enough. It works, but yeah.